Welcome everyone. Today we are talking about managing stress, and I think that it's a really important topic for us all to discover. Hi Sean, nice to see your face. As usual, Annette Marlow will take us through a mindfulness session, and then Amelia's got some really good information about managing stress. We will unmute people at the end and encourage a bit of conversation. It's always been lovely to hear feedback and great to see everyone's faces there. Hi Katie, how are you? There's Francis and Michelle, Maggie joining. And I always forget to introduce myself. I'm Dori Cabillo. Again, if you want to get any reminders about the sessions and information, please make sure that we've got your email address. You can private message me or register on our website. And without further ado, I will hand over to Annette to talk us through some mindfulness regarding managing stress. Thank you.
Okay, welcome everyone. Welcome back. Most of you look very familiar, so well done for coming on. I can see there's a few more people joining. What I wanted to talk about before we start our meditation today is this is very much related to stress, and I wanted to explain that all the forms of meditation that we have been doing and that are available, whether it's a relaxation exercise, whether it's a visualization meditation, a meditation on self-compassion or gratitude, or mindful meditation, all of them help in some way to manage stress. However, the most fundamental and powerful and accessible tool that you all have, and that is free of charge to all of us, is the ability to use your breath to help manage stress. And when we learn how to really use the breath optimally, it really connects to helping us calm down our nervous system and is an amazing way to help us manage our stress. So a lot of you may be familiar with sensations in our bodies when you feel anger or agitation, maybe when you feel anxious or overwhelmed. Sometimes you may notice there's a tightening of your chest, a restriction, short of breathness, a sense of trying to gasp for air. Sometimes your heart races. And all of these are normal responses when we're feeling overwhelmed, agitated, or stressed. But when we purposefully then slow down our breath, it brings about a whole lot of mental and physiological responses that are triggered in the body. So it sends a message to our brain to decrease the production of stress hormones like adrenaline and cortisol, and increase the production of repair hormones such as serotonin and melatonin. And when our nervous system begins to relax, your heart rate slows down, your blood pressure regulates, and you are then able to receive this full intake of oxygen and a full expulsion of oxygen. So when we talk about the fundamentals of breathing, we talk about that it also forms the foundation of all meditations. And it also forms the foundation of all mind and body practices. So lots of martial art practices, including Tai Chi or Qigong, all are based around the process of breathing. Same with yoga practices. Those of you who've engaged in yoga or do yoga know that the breath is the fundamental behind all practices. So the essence is that there's so many ways we can learn how to breathe, and it does take practice, like building a muscle. And it's really also important to find what kind of breathing works for you. So today we're going to practice, those of you, some of you have done this with me before. We're going to do it slightly different today. We're going to practice developing our diaphragmatic breathing, which means that we're trying to bring in more oxygen into our diaphragm and less into our chest. But I will walk you through it as we do it. So let's all get comfortable in our chairs. And if you can turn off any distractions that may be around you, and then simply begin to settle. So perhaps you can just begin by rolling your shoulders and wiggling your sit bones and spine until you find a position that you can settle into your chair. See if you can soften any tension through the shoulders, relaxing the muscles in your face, softening your jaw, your lips, your tongue, and perhaps even sense a wave of relaxation passing through your entire body. And then beginning to connect to the feeling or sensations of simply breathing. Feeling the air draw in through your nostrils as you breathe in, and the air passing out of your nostrils or even brushing the top lip as you breathe out. Purposefully letting go of any more tension or contraction in your body, and allowing your eyes to really soften now, closing them down if you haven't, or lowering your gaze. And if you can place one hand over your chest and the other one gently holding your belly. And just following your breath, begin to notice the rise and fall or expansion and contraction of your chest, rib cage. And then noticing also the rise and fall in your belly. And then if you can just begin to notice where most of your oxygen is going. Is it filling up your chest more or your belly more? Just noticing. And now, without any force, see if you can send more oxygen, more breath down into your diaphragm, into your belly area, and less in your chest area. Feeling the belly expand as you breathe in, and empty and fall as you breathe out. And perhaps you can even notice that there's a slight pause or a moment of stillness between your inhale and your exhale. And if you can take both hands now and rest them on your lower belly or your lap. And begin to focus your awareness on trying to make your out breath a little longer than the in breath. In other words, you're purposefully slowing down your exhalation even more. Sometimes it's helpful to imagine that there's a slight constriction at the back of your throat passage, like a narrowing that controls the speed of which air makes its way out. You may even notice that sometimes it creates a little oceanic sound. So continuing to see if you can lengthen or slow down each breath out. Experiencing the sensation of your belly filling up fully with breath. And then I'd like you to hold the breath just for a moment before it turns to your long exhale out. As you empty that long breath out, can you bring with it a sense of letting go even further, a sense of relaxing, and perhaps even noticing another point of stillness there before you take the next inhalation. Continuing to observe the cycle of breathing and settling into the rhythm of it. For some of you, it may help to add a little bit of counting in your mind's eye. For example, you might breathe in for a count of 3, pause for 1 breath, and then count out for 5. You're welcome to try that in your own mind's eyes. Otherwise, continue the sensation of feeling the in-breath and lengthening your out-breath. And now I'd like you to imagine yourself going about something in your day or just going about your day and purposefully stopping to take 3 rounds of this kind of breathing that we're doing now. You may be able to imagine yourself perhaps sitting down at your desk before you check your emails and pausing to take these 3 slow breaths. Or perhaps it could be when you hop into your car before you turn the engine on. Or when you go to your kettle and you're waiting for it to boil. Or before you get out of bed. Maybe it's before you make a phone call. See if you can imagine yourself several times of the day and where it would be. Seeing yourself pause and connecting to this sensation of slowing down your breath. And beginning now to consciously become aware of how your mind and body feels right now. Is the breath more fluid than at the beginning? Are you feeling calmer or more centered? Remember that it does take practice. So like training any muscle, it may take time to develop this diaphragmatic breathing exercise. If I can invite you to slowly begin to bring yourself back into the room, wiggling fingers and toes and moving your shoulders again, perhaps taking a stretch, coming into your normal breathing rhythm. And before I pass you to Amelia, just a reminder that when we stop to do some purposeful breathing, it really can help reduce the stress, manage stress in your body, act as a reset or reboot to your body, just like a computer, and really support your mental well-being. So I hope that's been a good reminder for some of you and helpful for others. And I think I'll pass you on to Amelia to talk to you more about managing stress. Thank you. Over to you, Amelia.
Thanks, Annette. Hi, everyone. Lovely to see you all again. As we were just doing that practice, I thought how wonderful it would be if everybody took 3 breaths before they turned on their engine and started driving. We might all have a bit more of a relaxed experience as we were driving around the town. So we're talking about wellbeing and managing stress today. And those of you who have been joining us for a few weeks will be familiar with what we've been discussing. So we've been talking about wellbeing and how this is about how you feel and how you're functioning in life, and also how you're evaluating your own life. So how you're feeling about how you're feeling and functioning in life. And we've also been taking a moment just to check in on our own well-being using a 1 to 10 scale, where 1 is where you're feeling really bad and you're functioning really poorly, and 10 is where you're feeling good and functioning really well. And just taking a moment to see where you might be along that mental health continuum this week, and just reflecting on how that might compare to some of the other weeks, if there's been any changes, which direction it might be going, and just noticing how you feel about the number that you've given yourself today. So continuing on, we've been working our way through this lifestyle medicine model, kind of like, well, I like to call it a bit of a recipe for well-being. And today's topic obviously is managing stress. And the way I like to look at stress, I suppose, is either we've got 2 options when we're feeling stressed. One is to reduce the stress somehow, and the other one is to increase our ability to cope with that stress. So I'm presenting you with this lovely model here that helps us to understand our energy in terms of the resources that might be available to us and the demands that might be put on us at any one time. And this is the job demands resources model. So it's usually used in the workplace and talking about demands of, being employed, but this could equally apply to the demands of being a caregiver, for example, or a homeschooler, for example, or a homeschooler plus a full-time employee. So essentially, the amount of energy that you've got for your work depends on the demands of your role and the resources you've got available to you. So when we're talking about job demands, this includes things like the complexity of the work that you're doing, the amount of pressure that you're under at work, whether or not you're feeling fairly paid or adequately acknowledged for what you're putting in, whether or not you've got the right systems and the equipment to do your job, whether you've got clarity about what your role actually is, things like bullying and harassment, and shift work are all examples of job demands. And then job resources include things like having autonomy in your role, opportunity for advancement, quality of leadership, how safe you feel at work, what the culture's like, feedback that you might be offered, variety of what you're doing, whether or not you've got the skills and the training to do the job. And when we talk about personal resources, which is really the focus of the conversation today, what we're talking about is things like your emotional capacity, your intrinsic motivation for the work that you're doing, whether or not your basic needs in terms of your work are being satisfied. So the things like autonomy, belonging, and a sense of competence. Also optimism and your intention to continue whatever the role is that you might be doing, whether that is your employment, or whether that might be as a caregiver, for example. If you might be kind of fed up and wishing that you weren't in that role anymore, that's going to have a big impact on your personal resources for the job. So continuing on this discussion around personal resources, often when we're talking about psychology, there'll be a picture of a brain. I always feel that this is extremely short-sighted, because our brain is really not separate from our body, and our emotional experiences are definitely not only happening in our brain. So just a reminder that taking care of ourselves in a really holistic manner is one of the best ways that you can increase your personal resources over time. Another important part of the process is making sure you process your stress. So we're actually a lot more resilient than we often give ourselves credit for. And a lot of the time we can handle, quite a lot of pressure and stress for quite a long time, as long as we're remembering to actually process that stress. So a lot of people tend to get stuck in their emotions or suppress them. That's always a popular option. Push them down and pretend they're not there. But in fact, emotions are a bit like a wave. So they rise and they fall, they come and they go. And another way of looking at it is kind of imagining an emotion like a tunnel. Sometimes when you're at the beginning of the tunnel or the emotion, you can't quite see the light at the end. But if you kind of just accept that emotion and let it pass through you, eventually you'll pass through to the other side of the tunnel and you'll see the light, and you'll complete that stress cycle essentially. So emotions are really energy in motion, and you will experience your emotions throughout your body, lots of different areas of the body where you might notice different feelings. And part of the practice that we've been doing in the mindfulness sessions is really helping us to let those emotions pass through us and to be processed. So thinking about other ways to process your stress, and I'd love to hear from you all at the end, the sorts of things that you do. Great example, of course, physical activity for a lot of people. We've all seen the examples of people in really high stress roles who are totally into triathlons and things like that, for example. Doing a lot of exercise and movement is a great way to get that energy actually moving through your body. And you don't have to be, a triathlete or a marathon runner to be able to do this. Gentle walking has the same effect. Dancing is a really fun way to get your energy moving and to help you to process your feelings. We've talked, of course, about breath work and mindfulness and just reflecting on, how did you feel at the beginning of the session before Annette started, and how did you feel at the end of that mindfulness practice? Just noticing the impact of doing some breath work on how you feel and where your emotions might be placed at any one time. Another good way to process your stress, crying it out. So having a big cry often doesn't necessarily help you solve your problem, but it can often help you feel a bit better somehow. So it's a way to let that emotion move through. Laughter, that's a really good one. I really like that one. And I notice, particularly with people like my sister, we laugh a lot, and I'm sure there'll be people in your lives who just crack you up without really doing much, but it's such a wonderful way to process stress, to be around someone like that and just have a big laugh about, you know, anything. Creative expression, another really important one. So those of you who are really active in your creative expression will probably reflect that, yes, it's a way that you express your emotions and process your emotions. So that can be really helpful, particularly for people who are busy, to have a creative expression that is really different to the work that you do or the things that you do day to day. And then finally, human touch is a really important one for processing stress. And I heard a great example this week, which was having a hug until you feel relaxed. So, you know, not the quick hi hug, but a proper hug where you hold another person and you just kind of wait until you get to that point where you go, and there's that stress letting go and that emotion passing through. And of course, this is has been really difficult for a lot of people this year. Some of you have probably been alone a lot this year, a lot more than usual. So you will have been missing this way of processing your stress, that having a hug or receiving touch from a friend or a loved one. So there we go, a couple of ways to help you to manage and process your stress. And just a reminder, as usual, wellbeing isn't a destination. It's not somewhere you arrive and then you've got it. It's really an active process, and it's something that we practice every day and we keep practicing for the rest of our lives. So I will stop the presentation there and open up for a conversation. Really curious to hear your thoughts and to hear some of the ways that you like to process your stress.